what we're going to see today is an infrastructure for flowing resources to the people on the ground doing the work. It's an infrastructure, like I said, that's already been built. It's been running, and it is now expanding and growing and diversifying. So you can start to see various scales at which it's playing out. And it's meant to be a planetary scale infrastructure, meaning it's meant to be an infrastructure that maps itself to the multi-level nature of reality and how the planet is organized in a fractal fashion. And maybe before I start, I'll just say the vision that I'm going to share today, I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't actually believe it's going to happen. We've been naming this vision. The first time I named it was in April of 2020, 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago. And it has been such a difficult battle to make any of it happen. The funders do not show up. The funders still look for financial returns and ego positioning rather than the fact the biosphere is unraveling. And there are various other things happening out in the world. So I'm not going to share this vision telling you, wow, I'm amazing, I can totally do this, and we got it. I'm going to tell you this is a real actionable framework that we have pulled teeth and have blood, sweat, and tears to make it happen to get to where we are today. And it's working. And that is no guarantee that any more funding will flow into it whatsoever, because of the weird dynamics of money and power in a collapsing world. First, we need to articulate what are we structuring it for. And so our vision is to see the Earth fully regenerated. And we want to fully regenerate it through deep patterns of healing in local landscapes across the planet, which is why we imagine a network of place-based efforts. So each different bioregion of the planet self-organizes and engages in its own regeneration. How do they do that? They organize bioregional learning ecosystems and frameworks for large-scale regeneration. This is what we explore in our learning journeys. And I've actually given about 250 webinars since 2020 on these topics. There's a huge amount of learning that has been well documented. And at the core of it all has been a real world prototype in Barichara, where we've been showing what we're doing and then taking what we're learning by doing it and sharing it with others. And now we're taking that prototype into various different levels through the structuring of this financial system. And so our funding ecosystem, you can think of it as having 3 basic levels, which is very much oversimplified, but this will give you a sense of how it starts to work. First, we have a local laboratory, which is 500,000 hectare regenerative work in Barichara through the Barichara Regeneration Fund. The Barichara Regeneration Fund was launched on December 3rd of 2020. So we're approaching 5 years that it's existed. This is a funding ecosystem at the bioregional scale with diverse local actors and financial flows. We set up a territorial foundation. We have created a regenerative school for children. We have created an innovation hub for regenerative economies. We've created a collective for syntropic agroforestry. A bunch of stuff has happened and is continuing to happen in Barichara. And with all of the structure of this framework of bioregional regeneration in Barichara, we were able to set up the Northern Andes Regeneration Fund last year. And now we have 7 Colombian regions where there is either an existing and legally constituted territorial foundation, or there's a local team that's in the process of legally constituting a territorial foundation. And in these 7 territories, we're taking the regenerative frameworks of the territorial foundation in Barichara and adapting it to the 6 other territories and mobilizing financial resources into the tapestries of local processes, into the portfolios of projects and the strategic narratives of each of the 7 territories and of the Northern Andes as a whole. And I'll explain more how that works in a moment. And then we have the 3rd level, which is the Earth Regeneration Fund, which is the planetary network. It helps to go back and look at how Fundación Barichara Regenerativa was set up, because this is the model that's replicated across the 7 territories. So for starters, we have 4 thematic areas. They are regenerative education, regenerative economy, regeneration of ecosystems or ecosystem restoration, and regenerative culture and territorial healing. So in each of these thematic areas, a community fund has been set up. And that community fund has been set up by mapping local processes that are relevant to that thematic area, convening the people that are managing and holding those processes, creating frameworks of collaboration between them, and then mobilizing resources to them and among them, which is all of that is the work of the Territorial Foundation. So this creates a pattern that spreads to the other territories. And so what you can see is that we have a framework that is shared across 7 territorial foundations for understanding what regeneration is, how it's tracked, what its priorities are, and they are developed by local actors and local processes in each territory. This enables us to have shared monitoring, reporting, and evaluation across a network of territories, which de-risks large-scale investment. And so this sets up a structure that could receive a much larger amount of money. I could easily see in 2 years, $50 million to $100 million moving into the Northern Andes Fund because of the way that this multi-scale structure is set up, with reporting and monitoring and evaluation shared across the 7 territories as a unified framework of a portfolio of portfolios. Because each thematic area is a portfolio of projects, but there are 4, and those 4 portfolios create a territorial portfolio for each of the 7 territories, and then the 7 territories creates 7 portfolios of territorial portfolios, which is the portfolio of investment opportunities for regenerating the Northern Andes. And now you can start to see the power of this framework. So what's interesting about this is we're developing the same framework in another place, which is the same framework I just said that Barichara is a model replicated in 6 other territories in Colombia. Well, we're also collaborating with the Legacy Project in the Greater Tikaranto Bioregion, or the GTB, where they can replicate out to the Great Lakes. And so by working with Brian and Susan of the Legacy Project, we are creating a framework for parallel and diverse strategic investment to mobilize resources to the Northern Andes and to the Great Lakes, anchoring it to the concrete demonstration of success in what we're doing in Barichara and in what they're doing in the GTB. And so we're developing a framework for replicating what we're doing in the Northern Andes between North and South America through the Earth Regeneration Fund. And so we're already, the GTB has structured a portfolio of projects with the 4 thematic areas that we developed in Barichara. They've adapted them to their context, as every territory or bioregion should do. And we're now jointly approaching strategic investors around creating a collaborative fund for systems transformation using the GTB and the Northern Andes as pilot projects. But then we can leverage all of this infrastructure and all of this organizing of the Northern Andes Fund to support those fundraising efforts, and then help move funding into the Great Lakes and not just into the Northern Andes. And now you start to see the planetary significance of what we're doing. That's what I wanted to share with you today. So you could see, like, it just keeps maturing through the practice of what we're doing. And we feel really ready to take this to the next level. I think in the next 6 months, we'll start approaching people about $20 million and $30 million asks, where we can start to really take this to the next level if we can find investors who actually care about saving humans from extinction. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, I want to come back to the disclaimer you added at the beginning of the session, which is this is a coherent, pragmatic, effective plan that can realize impact and truly regenerating Earth, and it's not going to happen. So can you elaborate on your skepticism, and how are we supposed to accept the story you told,
well,
in the light of that disclaimer?
If you've been looking at any of the data about the world ocean right now, you can see the lockstep of 5 or 6 of the roughly 15 Earth systems tipping points are all being crossed simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And so the prospect of us having a place to sit calmly and discuss strategy is pretty much entirely gone now. And what we've seen in the world of the wealth hoarders is that they're going into extreme wealth hoarding mode. And so the capacity for us to mobilize large resources depends on the stories getting to the right people. So I want to be sure that this doesn't sound like a utopian pitch. That's why I put that disclaimer at the beginning, is anyone who's not mature enough to hear that and stay in the conversation, who's not able to hold paradox, I'm not interested in talking to. And so my sense is that the paradox is that it may still be highly possible for the very unlikely circumstance that a large amount of money flows into a system like this and is replicated across the world. But it's extremely unlikely statistically with all of the factors that are running against it. And we just need to be completely honest with ourselves about that. Because that's like, if we're going to be social entrepreneurs in this context, sugarcoating it is not going to get us anywhere. And so that's why I just would rather put it front and center and be completely honest about it. Eric, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I fully agree. I have been through my own experiences over the last 5 years in terms of fundraising, and the deck is absolutely stacked against you. I can relate my own stories of fundraising and within the world of philanthropy, within the world of the large foundations, and so on and so on. And I've come to the same conclusion that you've just expressed very, very eloquently, that you are, we're fighting against thunder. So don't bother to try and live in illusions and try to go that way, because it just ain't going to happen. The opposition is extremely well organized, extremely well funded, and unless whatever you propose is in line with the existing paradigm, the extractive paradigm, you don't bother to go any further. So the real issue is, how do we unlock access to finance? And there's no time today to go through that whole discussion. But if we don't change the story, and the primary story to change is how we value. If we continue, because it doesn't matter where you go, whoever is trying to do regenerative finance and reshape finance and impact investing and everything else, you still are moving and you are within the guardrails of the existing system. So forget it. So that has to be radically changed. And the core point, the tipping point for making the argument, is how we value. How do we value life?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I think that's a key part of the work, is to develop the spiritual capacities within the conversations where we can bridge this in some of the structural ways that money does move and that can move. Because the de-risking and the other demonstration and verifying and all those, that part, like we know how to do that. But people have to recognize the value proposition first. Back to what Steve brought up in his first question. Why did I share this vision and say it's probably not going to happen? It's because I think the only way it'll happen, and this is my forecast now, the only way it'll happen is if enough of us believe it has to happen, even if we don't know if it can happen. And I think that is a requirement for the narrative strategy. And I intentionally put it into my storytelling because only those who believe it must happen will do the hard work of making it happen. It's not because it's a shiny thing. It's not because it's an easy sell. It's because it's what we must do and we're devoted. And that's part of the reason that I took the air out of my own balloon from the very beginning of the story today, because I deeply believe this is the only way to go. Deeply, deeply believe it. And I deeply believe it is not going to happen unless back to reading the book, The Lorax, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot. By the way, I've read The Lorax like 300 times to my daughter, so I've got it completely memorized. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot is one of the lines at the end of The Lorax, when the onceler gives the seed to the child. And it's the last truffula tree. It's the last truffula seed. So we have the seed. And after seeing my presentation today or participating in the design school, we know what we need to do. The question is, are we going to do it? And it's not up to me to do. It's up to us to do. And that's why we have to believe it's necessary together with the funders. They have to believe it's necessary. Any other sales pitch is not going to do it. If they want me to be shiny and pretty and politically correct, if they require that, if that image is more important than whether this is the right thing to do, see, it's like we have to believe it at that level of depth. And so that's where my Ozarks pragmatism comes out. Call it like it is. And I would say our chances are pretty slim, but I can't say if there's zero. I'm not omniscient. No one is. But if we're going to do it, it's going to be at that level of depth.